Welcome to another deep dive, and today we're taking a look at the world of science.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of sources, a mix of articles and YouTube videos.
Nice.
Yeah, and we're gonna be exploring what science, we're gonna dive into the main branches of science.
Okay.
And even look at how the scientific method can be applied outside of a lab.
I like it. Sound like a good mix.
So one of the sources that I looked at,
Yeah.
Fun and Learning with teacher Danny Yong, they use this analogy of science being like ice cream, with all these different flavors.
Uh-huh.
And each of those flavors represents a branch of science.
Okay.
But what I found interesting was even within like life science,
Right.
you have incredibly specific areas of focus.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Like, did you know that there are scientists who specialize in just seaweed?
I mean, that makes, it's a whole,
It's a whole thing.
it's a whole field, yeah. Like, seaweed plays a huge role in marine ecosystems, and they could, hold the key to sustainable food solutions and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to study them in depth.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, seaweed's cool,
Yeah. Let's look at seaweed.
It's about understanding, its place in the larger web of life and how we can apply that knowledge.
Absolutely. So we've got physical science, life science, earth science, but then one of the articles, natural science, kind of threw astronomy in there as a separate branch,
Oh, yeah.
which I thought was interesting.
It's interesting how these fields evolve over time, right? Like what was considered physical science. Like back in the day, as we gather more information, it might evolve into its own distinct area as our knowledge and our technology kind of advance too.
Yeah. It's like the boundaries are constantly shifting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a second and talk about the scientific method. We've got identify and describe the steps to the scientific method and the scientific method, steps, terms, and examples. They both break down this process, but I think it's interesting that it's not always, this rigid, like step-by-step thing.
Right. It's not like a recipe.
Right.
It's more like, the steps aren't always linear. It's more like a cycle of, questioning and hypothesizing, experimenting and analyzing and refining.
Yeah.
It's like troubleshooting your internet connection.
Oh, sure.
You start with a question, why is my internet down? You make a hypothesis, maybe the router's unplugged.
Yeah.
Then you test it, and if that's wrong, you move on to the next one. It's like a constant process of elimination and refinement based on, like the feedback you get.
I've never thought about it that way, but it's so true. Like, we're constantly doing these mini experiments in our daily lives.
Right.
So even if you're not, a scientist in a lab, you're still using elements of the scientific method.
You are, yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool. And, why science is, for me, talks about how science isn't just memorizing facts.
Right.
It's a way of, like, approaching the world.
It's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that way of thinking can be really valuable in any field, like relying on evidence and critical analysis.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about what science is, like, as a concept.
Yeah.
And, how the scientific method, like, actually works.
Right.
But now I'm kind of curious about the bigger picture. Like, how has science, shaped history? And how does it impact the world today?
Well, one of the sources we have, what is science? Definition, branches, and history and overview, kind of walks us through like the whole evolution of scientific thought, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that like those early observations of stars and like just trying to understand the natural world kind of paved the way for like all the crazy advancements we see today.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but it also points out, this source.
Yeah.
How science has become so much more specialized over time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like we've gone from like these broad natural philosophies to like these highly focused fields.
Yeah.
Like
you've got like
biotechnology and particle physics.
Yeah, you've got people who study, just like one tiny aspect of like a cell.
Right, exactly. It's mind-blowing.
Or a protein.
But like, do you think that with these advancements, do you think there are new ethical questions we need to consider?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this source, what is science, definition, branches, and history and overview, it really emphasizes that we need to do research ethically.
Right.
And like consider the consequences of like, what we discover.
Right.
It's not just about like, oh, we made this discovery. It's like, well, what are the implications of this?
Yeah, exactly. Like what could go wrong?
Exactly. And like, how do we use this responsibly?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not just about, science doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah, it's intertwined with everything.
Yeah, it's part of, society and politics and our values.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so one thing I thought was interesting was like the idea of science being used to like tackle global challenges.
Right.
Like understanding natural science, methods and benefits, kind of dove into that.
Yeah, like the pandemic is like a perfect example of how, like the scientific community can respond to a global crisis.
Yeah.
The development of vaccines.
Yeah, and treatments.
It really shows how like science and technology and healthcare like are all connected.
Right, and how important it is. It's almost like science is like a toolbox.
It is, yeah.
Like we can use it to address like these big problems that, affect us all.
Right, like climate change.
Yeah, climate change, food security, diseases.
Yeah, emerging diseases, all kinds of things. It's exciting.
It is, but it's also kind of humbling to think about how, even with all the progress we've made, there's still so much that we don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like this never-ending journey.
It is. It's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, what is science, definition, branches, and history and overview reminds us that there's still so many mysteries out there.
Oh, for sure. Like, the universe is massive.
Right, and there's so much we don't know about it.
Yeah, and so I guess, like, what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
What do you think drives scientists, like what motivates them to, like, keep going?
I mean, what is science? Definition, branches, and history and overview. It, talks about how a lot of scientists are just driven by like
curiosity.
Curiosity, yeah, like this desire to like
problems.
Solve problems, and like improve our understanding of the world.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not just about like making discoveries either.
Right.
It's also about like sharing that knowledge.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It emphasizes how important it is for like scientists to communicate their findings to the public.
Right, and to policymakers.
Yeah, policymakers. Like,
yeah, it may change, yeah.
Like if it's just locked away in, like, a lab.
Right, or a journal.
Yeah, like it can't really have a positive impact.
Yeah, for sure.
Like communication is key.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, being open and transparent is super important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to build that trust.
Yeah.
And make sure that science is actually serving,
the greater good.
Yeah, the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
That's a powerful thing.
It is a powerful thing. Okay, so we've covered a ton about like the history of science and how it's used to, tackle these big global challenges.
Right.
But now I'm kind of fascinated by this idea of like a scientific mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Like, is that something you're born with or can you actually like cultivate it?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think it gets at like the heart of what science really is. It's not just about like the facts that we know.
Right.
It's also like how we know them and how we approach like new information.
Okay.
And one of the sources, what ist science, definition, branches, and history and overview. It really emphasizes that, science is a process. It's not like an endpoint.
Right.
It's like always refining our understanding based on, the evidence.
Okay.
And being open to new ideas.
So it's not about being like stuck in your ways.
Right. It's not about like clinging to a certain belief or theory.
Right.
If the evidence says otherwise.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to like shift your perspective.
You have to pivot.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool.
And that's where like critical thinking comes in,
Right.
Being able to like evaluate information, objectively, question assumptions, and like look for biases.
Oh, for sure.
Both in ourselves and, the information we're taking in.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Especially like nowadays.
Especially nowadays.
Where we're like constantly bombarded with information from everywhere.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
It is, yeah.
Understanding natural science, methods and benefits.
Yeah.
Talked about like the importance of skepticism.
Oh, yeah.
It's important.
Not just blindly accepting what we're told, but like actually digging deeper.
You're right.
Asking for evidence.
Evidence, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what science is all about.
Yeah, so like skepticism is a key part of that scientific mindset.
Yeah.
But it's not about being like cynical.
Right. It's not about being like dismissive.
Right. Okay.
It's about being curious.
Yeah.
Like, approaching things with like a healthy amount of like
Questioning.
Yeah, questioning and like, how do we know this is actually true?
Okay.
You know?
So it's like science is training you to be like a detective.
Oh, I like that.
Always looking for clues.
Always looking for clues.
Piecing together the puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and like you said, it can be applied to anything. Like, it's not just science. Like, if you're making a decision about your health or like evaluating a news article or even just like trying to solve a problem at work.
Right.
Those skills are like so valuable.
Absolutely.
Like observation, analysis, logical reasoning.
Yeah, it's being like an active participant.
Right.
Not just like, passively
Thinking in,
accepting what you're being told.
Yeah. Absorbing it all like a sponge. You gotta be like, wait a minute.
Squeeze the sponge out a little bit.
Exactly. Wring it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most important things from like all these sources we looked at. Like science isn't just, happening in a lab somewhere.
Right.
It's a way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of like interacting with the world.
Yeah.
And it's something that like everyone can benefit from.
Absolutely. And that is a fantastic point to end on.
And I think so too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of science, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay, hit me.
How can you apply a more like scientific mindset to your own life?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, what areas, could benefit from a little bit more curiosity?
Curiosity.
A little more skepticism.
Skepticism, yeah.
And that willingness to like really look for evidence.
I love it.
Yeah, science is about, embracing the unknown, asking questions, and constantly like seeking new knowledge.
Yeah, and that's a journey we can all be a part of.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of science.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you enjoyed the journey and that you'll continue to explore and question and, just discover the wonders of the world around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place.
It is.